Our mission statement, grounded by our history as one of the oldest publicly supported schools in Wisconsin. Mineral Point School District is the heart of a small community that educates and inspires our students for a bright future in a big world. We'll take roll call.
Hedstrom here.
Here.
Dunn
Here.
Harris
Here.
Eisner here. Johnson here. Kelly
Here. We'll start with recognitions.
So first recognition we have some national FBLA qualifiers. FBLA went to Green Bay here recently and competed. We had several students that did exceptionally well. The following members, I'm not going to read all of them because there are long lists for everything that we're doing here for all of our recognitions tonight. A lot of great students, people that continue to make us proud to be pointers, competed in different things: business calculations, introduction to finance, human resources, digital video, advertising, journalism, leadership, and congratulations to the FBLA digital video production team of Matthew Ganinen and Madison Heim earning 3rd place, and Griffin Alba earning 4th place in business calculations. These 3 individuals have earned the right to compete at the national event in Atlanta, Georgia this summer. So they've done a wonderful thing. We have some other students. Derek Ottenstein placed 5th in personal finance. Olivia Wilson, 5th, introduction to FBLA. They will serve as alternates to nationals. We have some great competition recognition within the state. Congratulations to go out to Libby Poden Will Award, who are in 3rd place. Community service project. This was a state leadership project, so nothing that'll go on to the national level. And then Matthew Ganinen was recognized as one of the only a handful of individuals for completion of 3 of the 4 levels of Business Achievement Awards: a contributor, a leader, and an advocate. Completion tasks to earn this recognition take dedication, attention to detail, and hard work. Congratulations, Matthew. So our student body FBLA representatives.
Griffin got a Who's Who award.
Sorry, I did pass by that. Thank you. Thank you for choosing. Was chosen to receive the Who's Who and local chapter FBLA awards for exemplifying leadership qualities, making outstanding contributions to our local chapter. So congratulations to all of our FBLA student representatives. Anyone here from the FBLA wish to speak? Don't rush the stage.
I would like to, if that's okay, Mitch.
Go right ahead, Ms. Bakken.
Hello, board. Thank you so much for celebrating the successes of our FBLA kids. I'm so very proud to have taken this group of kids to Green Bay for State Leadership Conference, and I'm proud of the effort and the work that they've put into preparing for their tests and preparing their presentations for competition, and just really their involvement as members throughout the whole entire year. So it's been a great group of kids. We've got a great leadership crew set up for next year to serve and carry on the success of the chapter. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bakken. Forensics. I have the forensics staff here, so I'll allow them to come forward and speak on behalf of this past forensics season for Mineral Point.
Excuse my outfit. Today was country club versus country, so I had to dress like it. So our forensics team this year, the great part about it, let me show my other coaches. First of all, Mr. Smith, Mrs. McCoy, Mrs. Saber. We had 40 kids, which is a really humongous team. When we looked at other teams in our conference, even, they might have 14 or 12 and 40 kids was pretty impressive. We were super proud of that. The state level, we ended up taking, we had 22 entries and 20 made it onto the state level. Then when we got to the state level, we had 8 perfect 25s, 10 silvers, which would be 23, 24, and then 2 in the bronze. So 20, 22. And then when they add that all up, when the competition is over, and then they award this Excellence in Speech Award, which you probably saw. We were really fortunate, super excited. We won it 2 years in a row. And there were only 15 schools out of the 300, like there's no division. It's everybody against, doesn't matter the size. So 15 out of the 304 schools that competed, Mineral Point was one of them. And we finished in the top 5%, which means there were over 2,800 students that competed at the state level. And we have done it 2 years in a row. And the most impressive part about it, which Mr. Carey and Mr. Nevers, I mean, April seems to be the month of competitions at LA. I mean, we're all fighting
For the same kid.
yeah. And when it's, you guys know, when it's this small of a school, all these kids are in all of it. So we're all just kind of trying to beg, steal, and borrow from each other. So it's really impressive when you see what FBLA did, you know, Mr. Carey with the skills kids, Mr. Nevers with the band kids, and choir. It's really impressive. So, I mean, for a small school, we spread them thin, but they come up fighters. So,
I just wanted to add on that. It's one of the great things about working and being educated here is that the willingness, even like among coaches and staff, like no kid has to like pick a silo. They get to be well-rounded. And our students worked really hard this year. Kudos to our coaches too. They took extra groups on. That's why there can be 40 kids because of the large group things. But we fill our team. We're at the point where it's almost unique.
and you think about a lot of the kids that were in forensics were also in the first time that we've done the spring play for a really, which was Shakespeare on top of it. So I thought for sure, I'm like, there are no way these kids are gonna, and they came back the week after it and nailed it. So it was pretty impressive.
Thank you for your support.
Yes, yes.
So congratulations. Great segue to State Skills USA.
Mr. Gary, I think most probably know me. Skills USA might need a little bit more of an introduction compared to FBLA and FFA and whatnot. But basically, it's more than just the trades, but we do a lot of the same stuff in there. In fact, I saw, Maddie and Matthew were in a video production on FBLA. Maddie competed with Izzy Danenberg, Skills USA, and she got third place this year. Last year, she actually took first, along with Mackenzie Art, and actually went to Atlanta for nationals. This year, they didn't quite make that, but still placed top 3, which is pretty nice. Mackenzie, Art, Olivia Winhausen, Morgan Lee placed 3rd in bulletin board. Mackenzie and Izzy, Maddie and Izzy, as I said, for video production, took bronze. Jackson Bush competed in nursing, CPR, along with Ellery, and Jackson placed 3rd also. So these are just the ones in the top 3. I had 20 that we took to state. Mac competed in bronze, and there were competed in masonry, got bronze. There was quite a bit of masonry. Some of these competitions, like Team Engineering Challenge, have like 120 kids competing just in that one. So there's some were really big. We didn't place in the top 10 on that one. And then Josh James got a silver in cosmetology and was invited to Atlanta for nationals, as she chose not to. She's obviously got a really good cosmetology teacher. So that was pretty awesome. I bought her a mannequin head. That's about as far as my teaching went. I got no daughters or sisters, so she did very, very well. So congratulations to all of them. And I have 4 seniors exiting my officer party and new ones coming in. So that's a new change for us. We'll have some big shoes to fill. They were great. Thank you very much.
Mr. Nevers, would you like to share some of the success of the music program?
Yeah, I don't remember any of them. We had State Soul Ensemble. It's been a crazy 2 weeks. Week and a half ago, I don't know what it was. And we had a lot of events. and almost all of them brought back golds. The woodwind ensemble, which is everyone in the high school band that plays a woodwind instrument, so flute, clarinet, bassoon, saxophone, they were all in that. And that was chosen from the judge to be an exemplary award winner. So that was the best thing that the judge saw all day. And that's of things in the same room coming from Milton and Madison schools and Oregon and Mount Horeb. So we beat out all of them. Libby Dunn, also on a piccolo solo, was selected from her judge as for an exemplary solo award as well. It was a great day at State Solo Ensemble for us. The brass choir was also there, so all brass players and percussion competed. So that meant the entire high school band competed at state, and brass got a second. I also want to point out this difference in State Solo Ensemble. The high school band and middle school band this past week competed requirements of the WSMA, Wisconsin's School Music Association. You have to compete every couple of years to keep accreditation. And the high school band did Class A, the hardest class you could do. We got straight ones from our 3 judges. And the middle school, there's 4 classes you can do. There's a Class M for middle, and then there's Class C, B, and A for high school. 7th, 8th grade band did Class C, so the easiest high school level, and they got straight ones from all 3 judges as well. And we had great concerts over the week too. So that's it.
Congratulations. Not to be outdone, the FFA career development events also went on and competed recently. There were some second place finishes in the meats evaluation. I'd be good at this, be like, that's a hamburger and that's a steak, and then be about it for me. But obviously, a great group of kids here. Luke Schubert placed 7th individually, and the team placed 2nd. Cameron Patterson 9th, Michael Edgington 11th, and Trent Culver 21st as individuals. And a livestock judging team, Johnny Robinson, Ray Schutte, Emily Heisner, and Riley Senhend placed 6th at the state, and then an 8th place in state ag mechanics. Joey Robinson, who placed 1st individually, was part of that team. Graham Fitzsimons, Jaden Golly, and Tucker Dannenberg. So again, our students going out being ambassadors and really making sure everybody knows where Mineral Point is and what we're capable of doing. So congratulations, anybody here from FFA? Anybody like to stand up and say a few words?
Months now, about hours worth. Really, days from the last conference.
Congratulations.
We were talking about how you cook something, so that's one of the things they have to do is they have to identify retail ID cuts, so species, the primal, the retail, and then they also have to tell how to cook it. But we spent a lot of time drilling pictures of retail cuts into these guys over that 3-month time period. And thankfully, they're all young. They've got some years ahead of them yet, so hopefully next year we can go back and see if we can climb the step 1 step higher.
Absolutely. Congratulations. And now we have some royalty in our presence. I'll let Mrs. Klein speak to this. We have a employee of the year from CISA. So
professional organization that covers special ed directors is called WCAS, the Wisconsin Council for Administrative School Special Supports or something like that. And regionally, we get together multiple times a year. And one of the things that we do is all the districts in our area, so basically all of the CC3 schools, have different categories where we can nominate specialists that we would like to see. And so one of the areas is paraprofessionals. And so amongst all of the paraprofessionals in CISA 3, we had Judy Pelton as a nominee, and she was selected by the committee as a recipient. So she is the Region 3 Paraprofessional of the Year and will be put forward on the state nomination, which I'm not even sure she knew. She will be the state nomination level through WCAS. So we were fortunate to be able to recognize her at school about a week and a half ago. We surprised her. Mr. Wayne almost made it through without tearing up. Ms. Pelton almost made it through without tearing up. And her son was surprised too. So we kept it hush hush.
Tell her, so they know.
So we kept it pretty hush hush, and it was very much a surprise. And we are very thankful for everything Judy was able to provide for us and has for 44 years.
Congratulations. Yeah, we had everybody in the middle school, high school come into the cafeteria, and I had the microphone and I was going to make an announcement. And as I got to the point where I said, congratulations, Judy Pelton, was the greatest look of shock that I've ever seen on an employee's face. Was me, and absolutely. So it was well deserved. So congratulations. And then one more opportunity to recognize somebody rather famous. Kylie Rule just keeps adding on to all of the awards. Kylie was selected into the net for an award for the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. It is the Tricia Saunders High School Excellence Award, and there's only one in the state of Wisconsin, and the state of Wisconsin's winner is Kylie Rule. So, Kylie, would you like to say anything?
I mean, then there was a regional one. I didn't win that one, but I don't know if you know Macy Kilty. She was able to go on and win the national one, and that she's obviously from Wisconsin. So that's pretty cool that I was one that got to pick that, or that was picked for that award, following in her footsteps.
So a national award winner through women's wrestling, and Kylie will be wrestling next year in Iowa for the Wartburg School. So congratulations, Kylie. And that's all we have for recognitions.
Golly.
That was a lot.
That was.
This is Teacher Appreciation Week. I think some of you saw an email from one of the parent organizations as well. So just a shout out to all the people that help make the school district what it is.
And we're losing everyone. Thank you for coming.
Missy, did you just hear how much
I know, you have a lot to do. I get it.
Wow. That is humbling. I mean, we have recognitions. I think we have them at almost every regularly scheduled meeting. But tonight we only had, and sometimes it feels like they're very sports centric. Tonight we had one fantastic sports recognition. But it was really great too to hear like the diversity of activities that kids can participate in and, you know, and receive these honors. And we're not just a sports school, like look at all of the things that we excel at. And that just warms my heart. That was really cool.
You're here. That's like lots of well-rounded kids.
Yep.
I mean, I was at a forensics event and saw a lot of varsity athletes on the team. I was like, wow, okay, they got time for this too. It's amazing. So really cool, just sharing of talents, multi-talented kids all the way around. And there's just mutual support. It feels like everyone's kind of helping each other, and it's just really great. Okay. Now we have to do some organizational business. It's time to cite our officers and secretary and board meeting details, stipend and committees and all that. So we'll start with election of officers, which my understanding is we start with one officer and open for nominations, and then we take a motion to close nominations.
Correct.
We vote on that, and then if there's more than one nominee, then we use our ballots to vote on a candidate.
Yeah, that is correct.
And then once that's set, then we'll go to the next officer. Okay.
Instead of, can I ask something?
Sure.
If everybody's on board with keeping the same officers, just like one motion and everybody in place, way too efficient.
Is there a reason we couldn't do that?
I think that's certainly within your purview to do something of that nature.
Sounds like yes. Want me to restate it? No?
I'll
Okay.
second that motion.
Okay. So. I like the efficiency of the idea. I'm just thinking through this just for precedence. So. Let's say someone doesn't like this idea. It would get outvoted on this motion.
Correct.
I don't know, I want to make sure that if there becomes a situation where someone wants to nominate someone different for a certain officer, that
Well, this would be
That's
the
allowed.
opportunity for that to take place. You have a motion and a second, and now you
We have
can,
discussion.
you can discuss and debate the motion. And that would be an opportunity for, if that were the case, where somebody could say, I don't think we should do this. And I mean, just like you do for any other motion that gets made at any other board meeting.
good point. Okay, we have motion seconds. We're discussing. Well, I guess, it's for sake of discussion. I would be comfortable with this if it was unanimous. Or thought this was a unanimously good idea. So I want anyone to, if they are opposed to the idea or wants to change up the officers at any point, I'd like you to speak now during the discussion.
I think it's a great idea. And I also appreciate you're just paying attention to like the dynamics and how difficult it might be to like make a change. I don't want to make a change. Let me be clear. I do think it's important to pay attention to those things because the precedent does get set accidentally. And then at some point down the road, it would be really hard to.
I think some of us have been on boards in rooms where it hasn't been as smooth, or there hasn't been as unanimous agreement on officers. And so I want to make sure that we're honoring that, through the process. So, but I think this discussion is sufficient in my book.
I'm comfortable with this, but I guess I really like the point that you're making. We don't want to create an environment or an atmosphere where this is what we do. And then we just start steamrolling it and be like, no, Aaron's president. That's what we do. That's so I appreciate the thought, but I have no concerns at this time.
Yeah, I think it's just important that we acknowledge that we have a process in place to nominate each officer, and we can either follow that process or streamline it if there's a unanimous or if there's a consensus. So.
Are all the officers okay with being in the same spot?
Was Aaron president? Who's vice president?
Joni.
And the clerk, good, the treasurer?
Yep.
All right. Good.
Any other discussion? Okay, we'll take a vote on the motion to keep all officers the same for the next year.
Holding?
Yes.
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 Johnson?
Yes.
Done.
Yes. Great.
I mean, where he was going to vote against.
Thank you, board.
You don't want to throw your hat in.
All right, next we're going to appoint secretary. By board policy, we can appoint someone outside the board to be secretary. Currently, that's Angie. So
I'd like to nominate Angie.
I'll second. Don't give her a chance to second.
I don't even think it's our
Motion, or do
role,
we-
right? I think
Do we take a vote since there's just one nomination? Help me remember the process here. Do we do it the same with the officers?
I think
And
it's an appointment, so you're.
so we take a motion to close nominations and then that,
Yes.
fair enough.
and then
Yes.
does she have an opportunity to decline?
You can decline the nomination if you'd like. No, okay.
Please don't.
Thank you, Angie. Okay, any other nominations? Secretary.
Close nominations.
Okay, let's close the nominations.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call, or can we do?
You can do both. So
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed to closing nominations for Angie as secretary? Okay. Thank you, Angie, for your service. Quality work. Okay, next is board meeting dates and times.
So the board has traditionally met the second Tuesday of the month and you've moved the time up to 6 p.m. I would point out December 11th.
Second Monday of the month, sir. All right,
What did he say?
Tuesday.
The Tuesday. I have to adjust my calendar.
Yeah, no, second Monday of every month. Point out December 11th is the annual holiday concert. So last year we moved that meeting up to 5 o'clock. So I would recommend doing the same thing. Move that meeting up till 5 p.m. on December 11th. All other board meeting dates would be fine at 6 p.m.
The concert typically starts at 7,
Correct.
and historically we've made it there in time without a whole lot of stress, absent of sorting through COVID protocols.
Correct. Prior to, we had a board meeting and
It's a pretty brief agenda.
yes, everybody was able to make concert just this past year. We were an hour and 45 and everybody had a chance to make the performance.
Last year we moved from I believe it was 7 to 6.
6:30.
6:30 to 6.
6:30 to 6, okay.
Yeah.
And some nights that feels a little rushed, but for me personally, I still like getting done the 30, starting 30 minutes earlier with the thought of getting done a little earlier, but I think we should put that back on the table if that's stressful for anybody to get here by 6. Especially now that more people are getting called to the office. Anybody have an issue with 6?
Has anyone heard any complaints about it being at 6 from the public? Because I haven't heard anything.
I've not heard anything.
Oh, man, you're pushing it. What else was I going to say? City council meetings are not on the second Monday.
Correct. They have moved their meeting date.
They're early. We were having meetings on the same night. In
Same
prior
night,
years.
and-
That was a concern for taxpayers.
Yes.
Okay, so do we need a motion to approve the things?
Yes.
Starting at 6 p.m.
Yes. With the exception of December 11th.
I move that we accept the meetings as presented to start at 6 o'clock with the exception of December 11th to start at 5.
Voice vote on that?
Sure.
Okay.
Who was the second? Okay.
Bertram.
Speak up.
Sorry, mumbler. Everyone in
Okay.
the yard.
All in favor of Joni's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Next is the board member salaries. Currently, the board receives $600 annually. Mitch, thank you for including the CISA 3 board salaries. Sounds like we're kind of on the average to low end. For the record. We had a brief discussion about why board members get a stipend and what's fair market value or what's appropriate, and being sensitive to people who might want to run for the board that may have daycare or other work issues. That this stipend could help offset.
Can also be turned down or directed some other location. I think board members have done both of those things in the past. So, I mean, you have multiple options.
Right.
So when I look,
Go ahead.
when I look at the chart, a lot of the schools pay a per meeting basis. But we, as an officer team, over the last at least 12 months have committed to meeting significantly more than our normal monthly meetings, between being better about using our committees and about the kind of the goal setting we've been working. So if we were interested in deviating, I don't think that we can think about this as a per meeting, because I think we would all get way too expensive. I mean, there's times when we're meeting 4 times a month. Can't afford to pay ourselves anything on a per meeting basis.
I think it's just valuable just for anyone listening that we don't get paid per meeting, and we've probably met twice as much this year than as we did last year. Is that fair to say?
Easily that much or more.
Something that makes me wonder about is if you just said there's an opportunity to like decline it or put it in a directed somewhere else. I wonder if there is if board members do decline the stipend, if there's like a pot of funds that could go toward. I'm just thinking now, like if there's more meetings than normal and somebody needs a babysitting stipend more frequently, or like we don't want involvement to become cost prohibitive for anyone who gets on the board in the future. I don't know if that's something that we might not have to have that as a motion on this part. It might just be a procedural thing that could happen.
That would have to happen on a year by year basis, because we couldn't sit on money also. If you said, I'd like my money to sit in case somebody needs it for daycare and an upcoming board at the end of each
year at a time.
Yeah, at each fiscal year, that money something has to happen with that money. It either remains in fund balance, it goes to a fund 46, it's spent somewhere else, but that would have to be a yearly decision for each individual board member.
It wouldn't be a reliable relief for someone who worried about running for the school board because of finances. But it might help a little bit.
I think the only thing I could think of, and Angie, you can correct me on this as an idea, but Angie runs the Sunshine Fund, which takes donations from the board. It's mainly for like sympathy cards and plaques and recognizing, lost loved ones and staff appreciation. And I don't know what's on the list, but I suppose
what we use that for is when a loved one passes away, and to the
Excellence in education.
from that fund in honor of.
yes, thank you.
That is all that.
Yeah, it was just something that popped in my head. Just thinking about like the power of single parents to really have a lot of input and insight and the lack of time.
The money sit in the Sunshine Fund for that specifically.
That was where I was going.
So it could be earmarked for school board. And that could accrue over the years.
Any thoughts on changing it up or down?
I thought the data was interesting. I think it's noteworthy that we're on the low end for a high achieving school, but in the same token, it may be worth some investigation in a year where we're not sure how we are going to balance the budget to begin with and pay others what we would hope to pay them. I think it would be in poor taste to explore it further this year. So I'll make a motion that we keep it as is.
Second that.
I mean, you can look on board book, but
The estimated hours we spent at each of those. Because I don't want to divide that stipend by those hours.
Joni, but I
Don't want to know.
much guesstimate stuff. Yeah. There's a lot of hours, and that's just.
Yeah, I agree with Andy. I would say that in future years, if we're in a better spot, $1,200 at least seems reasonable, like $100 per month. It's still doesn't cover anything, but it helps with ordering pizza for the family and, a couple of times a month. And, so, but this year.
This one deals with money, so it would require a roll call.
Is this publicly accessible data? Assuming it's,
The CISA 3,
yeah,
it's available to me through a link as a superintendent. I don't know that it's open for anybody else to do a search on it, but
Is it linked to the public board book?
I don't. Did we link it to the public? I don't think so, did we?
Maybe we should just do
I
that.
didn't put it in there. Let me look.
And it's publicly accessible.
Yep. You can always delete and cover up the names of the schools. That's a problem.
is that the understanding that this is only shared among schools and not made public? But it doesn't
I
make
mean,
sense because every
each school
school board
district-
votes on it.
Right, each school district, if there was a records request, they would provide this information to their community, so.
It should be in the minutes of their May meeting,
So
right?
it's public, it's public now.
So it would be
Right.
public knowledge. The site that I go to is not open to the public, so. Producing it, publishing it isn't violating anybody's right to privacy.
I'm not going to belabor the point by pointing out what our closest neighbors are. Board members and board presidents. Okay,
It's just,
sure, okay. I think we're ready to vote. We have a motion and second.
I missed that.
It's Bush and Heisner.
Keep it the
It's the
same.
same.
Bush,
Bush.
Heisner.
Yeah, okay.
Bush,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Gelding,
Yes.
Bergstrom.
Yes.
Yes. Next is appointment of standing committees. We have the operations, policy, personnel, and finance. Skelding is chair of operations and policy, and Heisner's chair of personnel, and Bush is chair of finance. Does anyone feel strongly about switching committees or becoming chair or not being chair? I think on the one hand, if you've got like skills and experience to offer a certain committee, I think it's good to stay on that committee. On the other hand, if you're wanting to kind of diversify your knowledge as a board member, I think it makes sense to rotate committees. So if anyone feels strongly about changing, last year, I think we just kind of hashed it out. Instead of, I don't know, we really made a motion or anything, but how we just kind of talked it out and said it and moved on.
Apologize, I'm not aware it was on the personnel committee.
I don't think we've had a meeting recently.
We had one joint personnel finance, which might have been before your time.
Who's at it?
Rachel, was that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well done.
As planned.
Okay, so we'll keep everything the same. Does that sound good?
I have not been a great personnel committee chairperson about getting meetings called, so if I stay in that seat, I will try to do better, but if somebody else wants to take it, I won't be offended. Putting that out there.
I don't think we've really had anything come up that we've needed to meet.
Oh, I can't think of anything super pressing.
I would agree with that.
We probably should revisit the fact that we were kind of heading towards like the week before the regular meeting, maybe like a Monday or a Wednesday,
I'm a standing.
having kind of set evenings for committees and then the week before that, trying to decide whether each committee had an agenda to hold a meeting, and then if not, then we would just not have a meeting that month. And do we want to? And I can do a better job of like sending out emails and prompting everybody and stuff like that too. But do we want to kind of hone that practice a little bit more to try to be a little more scheduled and standardized with how we do?
I like that. I like the thought of holding kind of that Wednesday before the Monday board meeting. By like now for the next 12 months, if I don't put that as a kind of a hold on my calendar, I'm less likely to have something in that space. I'm guaranteeing that something will come up, but if you ask me on Monday of that week, if I'm available on Wednesday, the likelihood is going to be much lower
Right.
than if I block it now for the whole year. So I like that plan.
Are we just holding the Wednesday before?
That was my question.
I like that idea better because if not, then I'm coming. And like, let's say, you know, it just happens that like personnel and operations and those were like scheduled on different nights. So that's like 2 nights in 1 week.
Right.
So if we just hold it for Wednesday nights, say if there's, you know, 2 of these committees need to meet that Wednesday, and then if there's an extenuating circumstance, we'll schedule something at a different time.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Yeah. It feels like we should be able to get 2 committee meetings in a single evening. And we can prioritize then and say, well, we'd like all 3 committees to meet, but these 2 clearly take precedence or take prioritization over the third one, and the third one then waits until the following month.
That's an idea for us.
Well, we were talking about in the strategic planning stuff, doing like an ad hoc social and emotional learning committee.
Yeah.
I think we still got to do that work, and I think we could always do it in the middle of the school year or whatever. Thanks for bringing that up, though.
The first Wednesday of the month
1 hour max.
will
The
be
committees.
will be committees.
1 hour per committee.
Yeah, the max, like you hard stop, 1 hour.
1 hour per committee. And I think Angie, you had said the Thursday prior having notice. That's your preferred deadline there. Okay. So try to have an agenda.
If you're gonna do it Wednesday,
Yeah.
is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
For? You need 48 hours in advance. So that's not entirely true.
Okay.
I mean,
So
end of
Monday by
day,
noon would be okay,
yes.
or even
Well,
5.
Depending on what time you're planning the meeting. So yes, Monday by 5. 4 would be good.
Right. Okay. Does that sound good for people? Okay.
Can you hold, like, book the meetings now in board book, like open committee meeting slot?
Yeah, pretty.
I mean, one slippery slope that I wonder about is, I think it's a good idea to hold the space, but to not end up meeting just for the sake of meeting, could like come up with agenda items because we're having, just keeping that in mind. Just worried about scope creep, I think.
I don't think we do that. I think it's a good point, but I think we're pretty deliberate about, we've met a lot because there's probably a lot of unmended fences that needed to be put back up and, you know, things that needed to be dealt with.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of reason why we've been meeting a lot, plus the strategic planning stuff. But good point.
I feel like the chairs are pretty sensitive to
I'm sure. I mean,
meeting worthy
and me
items.
here,
Right.
I'm sure.
Okay. So we'll keep all the committees the same, and we've got a plan for committee meetings on a regular basis, so that's great. Okay, next is CISA 3 delegate. Current delegate is Will Harris. Would you like to continue? How many meetings did you go to? Or two?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy to. It's good.
Okay.
starting tonight, I will sit on the CISA 3 Board of Control. So I encourage Will to stay involved but we will both come back with a better view of all the services that are available through
Yeah.
CISA 3. Not to step on your toes.
I was gonna say, does it make more sense for you to switch to the CISA 3 delegate for that reason?
Are you doing something with WASB too?
She was.
I've been the WASB delegate the last 2 years, but I would be okay if somebody else wanted to take that on.
Well, we could switch that if you
Okay.
wanted to, if you're gonna be there anyway.
Can
Yeah.
you do both? I think you,
I think so.
like Board of Control and delegate?
Like conflict of interest.
You know what, I don't know how to answer that. That's a
Can you
really
answer
good
that?
question.
I do not.
Perhaps based on that, we should,
Listen.
yeah. Although somebody else could still become the WASB delegate when we get to that next item.
What does that involve?
So the WASB delegate, at the annual, convention, you spend, I think, is it the Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday afternoon, whatever that full day is. You spend that entire afternoon reviewing all of the proposals that we bring before WASB of part of their policy things they want to lobby for. So like the one that was particularly relevant, we just had, an email back and forth about the school transportation. And this year, one of the, resolutions that went before the WASB delegates was whether or not, WASB should support limiting reimbursement to a single amount per family if students are coming and going from the same address. But just it's a long list of resolutions that they bring forward and debate. Last year, there was also one that I emailed you guys on it.
Yeah,
It was about specifically calling out voter education as one of the
Right.
core curriculum areas. It's interesting, but it does eat up a whole afternoon of the convention, which I've done it twice now. So if somebody else wanted to jump in, that would be okay with
That's
me.
really the only commitment.
That is
for
the
the
only
year,
time, yeah. That's it for the whole year.
What if you're not opposed, what if we planned on you two switching?
Okay. Unless it turns out I
with
can't.
double checking that that's not a conflict of interest with Dr. Nutter, or would you like me to
I
do
can,
that?
I can reach out to him.
It's good to me.
Great.
I'd like to nominate Tony Heiser to be the CISA 3 delegate.
I don't think we need to make a motion for that.
No?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Agenda item.
Not necessarily under the action items.
Okay. Cool.
You can appoint a delegate.
Boom. Sunshine fund.
Sunshine Fund, we talked about that a little bit. Is this a time where you request for a replenishment from the board?
Yes. Again, that is member of family passed away. We as board members and staff send dollar monetary donation to excellent. We have a nice nest egg at the moment, but it's, again, nice. There have been times where I'll come once, and then sometimes it was months in between. But
This is the time of the year where the board would make a suggested donation.
correct.
Plus, you do a good job, like if it's getting low, you
Yes.
seem to
I
bring it
asked
up
for
at
some
certain
money,
meetings,
yes.
yeah.
And they have asked, from the nation that we send a check from cash being sent. They don't want a personal check from anybody, because at the end of the year, we send a tax document and, was sending a personal check,
Oh.
person myself. Or that that's how they told me to do it.
Okay.
And now they're telling me, no, they don't want that. So then moving that over into that.
Actual personal checks.
Absolutely.
And how would the checks be written?
It'll have to come. Well.
So to the Mineral Point School District, you're
Yes.
marked for Sunshine Fund? Okay.
Venmo.
Not kidding.
Yeah, if you
Sure.
did,
Yeah.
but if you don't, that's okay.
This is to do with the post office.
Money order.
Money order.
But you still take cash, right?
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
You take cash.
Cash
They don't.
is always.
They don't take cash.
Got it.
Helmet. City Foundation. That's on our, we'll send a check to the school when we send a payment to foundation.
Thank you for managing that. Okay, next we'll go to approval of minutes. We've got the regular April 10th meeting. We've got the policy committee on 4/17. The oath of office meeting where we took a couple actions, and then the finance committee immediately following. So I'll take a motion to approve the minutes together or individually.
So moved all together.
Second. Lily Heisner. Any discussion?
Gelting,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
Done.
Yes. Okay, next is communications. Let's start with board communications received. We'll start on this side with Andy.
I just received one earlier today about Staff Appreciation Week, and I just wanted to echo that I think we have an incredible staff, and it's nice that we have a group of community members doing things each day this week to recognize the staff. I was going to ask, what does FEP stand for?
Family engagement.
Replace the.
It was
Like the family.
PEP.
It was PEP, now it's PEP.
PEP, so yeah, family, it used to be like parents. It used to be PEP and now it's family, just to make it more inclusive.
Okay. Whatever the EP stood for before, it still does.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same, but it's, yeah, just trying to be more inclusive of all. Our partnerships with family.
I received one about the doors at the elementary school, concerns about their latchability, which I'm assuming has been handled. And I can't think of anything else. I did get communication from a potential applicant for one of our openings about the substance of the position as well.
Those are the same 3 emails that I received. Nothing else.
There was an email came right after our April board meeting. I think we were all on just gratitude for the decisions that were made.
I got one email that I think I shared with the board about a parent that was concerned about a sheet that went home from at the elementary school. It was like a coloring sheet that had theme of stopping child abuse or domestic violence, and they were upset about it and wanted to know where it came from. But I forwarded it to the administration, and the current parent was responded to with their concerns to my satisfaction. And I didn't get any follow-up from the parent.
Nothing else.
Okay.
And yeah, shout out to the teachers.
No, nothing more to add that hasn't been said.
Citizen communication, do we have anyone signed up? Okay. Anyone in the room want to speak? Okay. Anyone online want to speak? You can use your raise your hand icon and we'll unmute you. Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you.
Aaron,
Yes.
I would just like to give a couple shout outs. I attended the National Honor Society banquet and I was super impressed with the kids, like the seniors graduating, what they're doing after school, really interesting, super diverse. And then very large amounts of kids in the program for both the junior and senior classes. And then also I attended the high school play, Hamlet, and I was really blown away by the collective effort and then also some of the individuals in the play. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the everybody that made that happen. It was super cool, and I mean that could have easily passed for like a college level play. So they did a great job.
For sure. Good to see the drama club coming back. We'll keep her going. Okay. Anybody else? All right. We will go into items for information discussion. First, we'll have committee reports. Policy committee. I'm going to talk briefly. We're going to have the first hearing of the policy under action.
Rule 458 on the homeless education. Basically, that was a DPI recommended change to our current policy. Just a short phrase to be taken out and then a couple things added in to just help clarify and make sure that it met the DPI's requirement based on their audit.
Yeah, minimal. Okay. Finance committee.
Yeah, we met right after the April 24th meeting, and I think that was the right date. Opened by discussing an email we had received in regards to the open middle school position, whether or not we were interested in deviating from our plan. Then we spoke about insurance, which we'll speak about as an action item, so I will not mention that now. And then we went into a good deep discussion on where the budget sits currently with a very conservative approach on kind of a worst case scenario aspect and what it looks like now, and kind of discussed, we can still pull to improve our situation, but ultimately, looking at very realistically not having a balanced budget and taking from fund balance because we do have an overage there compared to our policy, and just looked at various situations for expenses that we still have to consider prior to July 1 to pass the budget, and kind of what those levers look like and what our situation looks like currently, and if we get some of the windfalls from the state that are being tossed around. So fantastic discussion. And it was good to have a lot of board members there for that particular meeting.
Great. Yeah, we'll talk more about the health insurance changes, and I think we'll talk briefly about the budget situation. We talk about compensation approval and potentially tabling some of that for later on. Okay. Next, thanks, Andy. Next is building principal reports.
Start with the high school.
Okay.
We were fighting back.
I just keep rotating it.
For you. But it's been a busy month, as you guys
can see, very successful month. A couple other things that have happened, obviously, Mr. Harris mentioned the play. The play was phenomenal. Something we're looking forward to doing each year. We talked about kind of going more like comedy next year, then kind of rotating back to some more Shakespeare stuff and just kind of rotating them each year. But kids are pretty excited about it. I thought it went really, really well. I saw it on Sunday afternoon with my wife. And it snowed like 10 inches. So without the snow, the play was phenomenal. So a huge shout out to all those kids for everything they did for that. That's a lot of time and effort put into that. Other things that happened over the last month, we had prom, so that went off well. It was beautifully decorated. If you saw any pictures, it was really fun. The kids all seemed to have a lot of fun from what I've heard. Everybody made it safe Monday morning, so that was where I was most important and most worried about it. I make it safe on Monday, so that was great to see that. Upcoming this week, hopefully. We don't have rain on Friday because it's our annual community service days this coming Friday. Right now, that rain is not looking great, but we all hope for the best. So the community service is coming up here on Friday. Kids will go out different groups throughout the community from 8 to about noon. Come back here. We have Spring Fling. This is the second year we've done this. Where we kind of have like a tailgating party where they play games and stuff the student council puts on to kind of celebrate the end of the school year. Other than that, I don't have a whole lot. It's been busy, but really, really good stuff over the last month. So, yeah.
I have a very general question. We've seen repeatedly how many really high achieving, really involved students we have, and they're high achieving, whether it's in athletics or in academics or in all sorts of other extracurriculars. Do we feel like these students are putting too much on their plates, or like, how, I don't even know what to say. Like, are we in what's like,
Overextending
yes.
themselves.
Yeah. Do we see students overextending themselves, or are they pretty good at saying, I'm going to go hard at the things I want to do?
I actually do think most are pretty good at saying, I can't do this, because it's not, like, typically you'll see kids pick skills or FFA. They won't generally pick both. Some do, but then they're not in FBLA. So yes, we have kids that are very involved with things, you know, and then of course they're in band and this and that. I think that they do know their limits. I think those are discussions that our guidance counselor and, you know, they'll have with me at times too. So yeah, I think that we do a pretty good job of that, and recognizing also when kids have hit that. Right? So that's the nice thing about Miss Rob and Miss Brunson. They are always connected with kids that. So, the other thing we have Friday is the state civics exam or competition, I'm going to call it, is this Friday as well. So we'll send 4 kids up there to do that, which I think we talked about last board meeting, how they did.
I shared that with one of my updates as well. Group compete and move on.
Along the same lines that, you know, some students will have mental health day. So, are you seeing an uptick in that this year, or with certain students, or that from your? You'll have a certain group of students that that's based on things that are going on in their lives. They do a great job of communicating that and helping those students find success. Sometimes it's just a matter of, I got to come in the morning and I got to talk to Miss Brunson. I can do that in RTI and I don't miss any class. I can talk to Miss Rob at lunch because she says, hey, come on in the lunch and we can get back on track. So I think there is probably a slight uptick in that. No, but I don't think it's drastic. Would you say that, I mean, is it fair to say by and large there are kids that maybe are not necessarily overextending themselves with too many activities, but more maybe have difficult situations at home or struggling in school academically, or some kind of combination of that? Or is it kind of all over the place? I think you got a population of each kind of type there. I think the sources of strength training stuff is actually those pockets of kids that you see a lot more. Sources of strength really gives them some, and a couple more adults in the building to
I think it's something we always continue to build on. Saw a lot of good growth out of the sources of strength as we end up through this year, and I believe that will continue to grow. I'm really excited where that's taking us.
Curious one more.
Yeah, you're fine.
Along the same line, you know how many, thinking about all this really exciting activations, really powerful stats out there about Mineral Point kids. What does it look like? What's that spread look like? We took just student ID numbers and said, okay, these are the kids. Like how many are in 3 different things, 4 different things? What's the university kids who are nothing?
I'll share that with you. We talked about that in March. I think I put that spreadsheet out there. So we actually track kids that are in 2 or more activities. That over the last 4 years, and I believe that's partly due to the pandemic, has come down. Because there were restrictions and so on. We're starting to, I think we'll start to see that come back up. Right now it's about 72% of all kids, 75% somewhere there of all kids are in 2 or more activities. That could be football and FFA. That could be the musical and whatever combination, FBLA or forensics. So right now, I think that's back on the upswing. Something I really want to dig into this summer to make sure that it is tracking all of those, because this past report, I noticed it was missing a couple things. I'm like, well, no, I know this kid's in this and this, so why is that not? That's something I'm going to try to make sure this summer that we get.
Why is dash?
I think we can run it on there, but I think there's some stuff on our side that's not getting, for some reason, pulled.
You know, like
Yeah.
which kids are just not.
Yep. Another cool thing that I don't know if you told everybody. Oh, nope, I did want to bring that up too. If you have a chance, stop in the cafeteria. We got the senior puzzle up. That is something we plan on doing from now on. We'll actually have it up whole year. We were working on it this year. It was kind of, Ms. Brunson is great at doing this, and she'll go, here, let's do something like this. I always call it, she lights fires in one part of the room, and then she's like, here, fix this. And I'm like, so she had sent me an idea. It was Rhinelander's version of it. They're the Hodangs. If you ever seen Rhinelander's mascot, they have wings. So they put their kid's picture up on wings that they put on the wall and stuff. And of course, I didn't want wings because we don't have wings on our mascot. So I said, well, let's do something else. And of course, my brain got kind of going around, and we're like, well, let's do a giant puzzle. She kind of looks at me kind of funny. I go, no, I'm serious. Let's do a giant puzzle. We have a 3D laser that can cut out puzzle pieces. So we've cut one out for each senior. On it, it has their name. If they've picked where they're going, it has what they're doing next year. So it might be workforce, it might be it'll be Platteville, it might be Madison, it might be I'm going to be electrical or going into be an electrician. And then it's got their senior picture on it as well. That'll come down the day before graduation. They'll get to take that home during graduation. If you get a chance, stop out and see it. It's really cool. The words up above it, unfortunately, they didn't stick the first time. So there's the word point. I think there's a couple other words on this side, but the whole thing it started falling off. So we're going to re-stick that back on there. Kind of cool. It was this, Ms. Brunson wanted to showcase where the seniors were going and hopefully encourage kids to see, hey, I can do this, I can do this. So something we'll cut out the new puzzle pieces this summer and get their names on them and have them up there for the whole year. So Adam has me. Kind of cool. So. Anything else? Scott?
We finished our forward testing, and we used a new format this year where we had our 6th through 8th graders all testing at the same time. Normally they would just do it in their individual classrooms, but we decided to try it as a group, and it went over very well. I believe that we're probably going to keep that testing format going forward. So, and now we're moving on to STAR assessment. So it seems like one assessment after the other. Also, we have a pretty large number of kids in our book clubs. We have a 6th, 7th grade book club, and then we have an 8th grade book club. And over the last couple of weeks, both of them have taken field trips to Madison, where they'll go to like Barnes and Noble, and then they'll go downtown to like one of the museums where they'll go in and they'll meet, you know, different people. That's really been popular as an activity. And then Mrs. Rob has started like a game club over the middle school lunch hour, like chess and other groups. So that's it for middle school.
Did you have them visit the newest bookstore in town too?
Yes, they did go downtown. That's where they started their trip out. They went to the bookstore downtown and they took off for Madison. So been on that trip one time, and that's always been a really nice trip. So not the Children's Museum, one of the Madison Public Libraries. I just got that confused. So well, I've been to the Children's Museum a few times too. So
Will we have the star for the June meeting?
yes,
Just in
we should
terms
have
of-
those results.
Just curious, just for continuity and getting
Yes.
your opinion on it, since we only get you for the June meeting.
Because I'm going to be at the June meeting.
I just did.
You're going to Mount Olympus, you know, the
Yeah.
day after, well, that's probably the following week.
31st, yes. Yes, because of how the calendar is set up, the attractions in the Dells do not open it until Memorial Day. Usually we take that Mount Olympus trip the last day of school, but since school ends May 26th, we're taking them that following Tuesday. So myself and 3 other staff members will go on that trip on Tuesday. I'm actually choosing that over hosting golf sectionals. Mr. Austin's going to cover golf sectionals because that'll be my last 8th grade Mount Olympus trip. And I've had a lot of fun with this 8th grade group over their last 3 years. So I want to be a part of that trip. So.
They always need chaperones.
We do.
Yeah, true. And then 8th graders will graduate May 25th. So then they will not be in school on the 26th because our 6th and 7th graders will be on their field trips.
What's your assistant's name again? That was
Uh,
coordinating that.
Mrs. Brinkman. Yeah.
Now that you explain all that, that all makes a lot of sense. But I don't know how many, she must have gotten confused on the dates, and they're not going to Olympus on the last day of school, and they're Good Friday, and they're playing on next Tuesday. Are we sure they got all those dates right? But maybe that was just.
And I think we have about, and I think we have about 40 out of the 60 students that are signed up to go. There's some that just they don't want to go, which is fine, but we'll have about 40. Yeah, it's a great price. You'll never really get that price again. They go like Mount Olympus. It's a really good deal.
I'll plan on seeing you at the June meeting.
All right, Mr. President, it's a requirement. I'll be here.
Thank you, Mr. Renwick.
Pretty busy. And we are just finishing up STAR assessments. So I know I can tell you that we're planning on that one student who we anticipated we might be accelerating. We are going to would like to accelerate that student. I'm going to reach out to the parent, but they're definitely on board. And we're looking at 43.2, third graders for next year. So it's still higher than we started with, and there was needs there to I'm just trying to anticipate already 2023, 2024. So we're talking a lot about assessment at the leadership team level. Looking at standards-based grading, one area to really kind of dig into. Now that we have the literacy curriculum and we have a solid math curriculum, how do we better communicate to families and to students how their child is actually doing on the skills and strategies that are laid out in the standards? Right now, we just have a letter system. We feel like we could do better about that. So that's just one tip for parents. This grading or some level, some version of it. So
What does that look like then? Yeah, like what would a grade
so
or whatever?
yeah, would look a whole lot different. A typical report card, but 3 is where you want to be for a kid. That's the grade level standard. That's standard, you know, for 3rd grade or 2nd grade. 4 if they're exceeding the standard. That should be really rare. And then like a 2 is progressing but not there yet. So you actually would see maybe several 2s in the beginning of the year because standards are by the end of the school year and it's November and would expect them to know all that. We're going to take it very slow. That is something we're exploring.
It's kind of like the kindergarten report card in a way, with like,
Yeah.
you know, can count to 100,
Yeah.
do the letters or whatever, and at the beginning of the year they can't, but they want to be there by the end of the year.
That's a good example. Standards get complex as we go older, and so one of the challenges I think we're going to run into is we're used to A's or B's, like I want all A's, and it's like, well, that's not. It'll be a shift, so we're going to have to work on communicating well and what this grades. We're also doing some action research in the library. Kids have picked again this year books they want to read in the school library. So they spent they knew they had a $5,000 budget. We got a grant through a nonprofit. We matched it. And I told them they had $5,000. They had a $20,000 request. They wanted a lot of books, which is great. So they had to whittle it down, and Mickey Uppin has been working with them to find those books that they feel the library is lacking. Not that the library is poor, but you know, especially from a kid perspective, what do they want to see? So lots of sports books, lots of hunting, fishing, outdoors books, lots of nonfiction, lots of scary books that appropriate for the age level, and lots of series books. So they went around again this year, surveyed their peers, and the books do you want to see, and then they were in charge of the money, made the purchases. You know, a really cool project. What we're doing right now is trying to survey those kids. Here's an engagement survey. Oftentimes assessments are cognitive based, like how good of a reader or writer are you? These surveys will help us measure how engaged are you as a reader and writer, and how much do you identify as a reader and writer. And we want to see if the kids who participated in the book club, the book budget club, maybe grew a little bit more, both cognition and engagement, versus kids who chose not to participate because it was voluntary in 4th and 5th grade. We want to just see if there's any results there of empowering kids to be readers and writers actually has an achievement. Once we suspect it does, but we don't know yet, so we're trying to kind of tease out, see what happens. Yeah.
Are there any other strategies other than the book buying club to get kids engaged?
Yeah, well, like when we purchased the classroom library as part of the classroom library books as part of the acquisition that you all approved, say about a quarter of that money went to classroom libraries, and that's a awesome strategy because it doesn't stop with the textbook. It's like if we taught you how to read, but they actually need opportunities to transfer the books they want to read. And, so that's a wonderful strategy that the district's been real supportive of. So, and then, yeah, just carving out time for kids to read, and then giving teachers time to then meet with kids as readers and writers and confer with them and give them some one-on-one coaching. It's really important. Guided reading, guided writing. Basically, the gradual release of responsibilities is our big framework, big strategy we use.
You plan on having your standards-based assessments kind of put together by the start of the fall?
We'll do it.
That's a very big task.
Is it? Okay.
Yes.
That's a good question. I was wondering the same thing, because the leadership team we're looking at, you know, want to get this rolled out, but we're gonna probably take it as we continue through the curriculum again. So we'll do like unit 1 and benchmark. We'll tease out those standards. What were the standards that we really wanted? What were the essential outstanding standards? Maybe it's 4 to 5. And those are the ones we want to put in the report card. So we'll kind of build it as we fly it. We're not gonna, I don't think we'll roll out a standards-based report card next year. We're just really in an initial exploration phase, but that's a good question because it's not something you can buy. Something, it really starts with belief system of the teachers and the community members. What do you believe grading should do? And should it reward effort or should it reflect achievement? We would argue for the latter. Just because you got all your homework done, doesn't mean that should be an A. It really should reflect learning. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't even spoken about it with the just passing more kind of planning to see with faculty in our district. Conversations.
That, like, that topic, like published in like, or peer reviewed journal type stuff, that's
Database grading.
yeah.
The newsletter just sent out today. There's an article in it from like 2013. It's a pretty good article about what it is, what it isn't, but also how to structure conversations around it. So it's linked in the newsletter I sent out. Give it a minute to check that out. I think it's a good primer on what it is. And yeah, there's a lot of literature written about it. And there's also debates, you know, Common Core standards and you know, pros and cons there too. But that's where we're also looking at assessments like these, like surveys, like engagement surveys, because we know we don't want to show just achievement. We also want to show so they love learning and you know that. Really just trying to personalize school even more for kids.
The concept isn't new, and as Matt said, there's a lot of parent education that has to go on because the student might not have mastered a standard that was introduced in the beginning of the school year, and it's now the end of the year, and they still might be doing some work, you know, some interventions, some things to make sure that they do master that standard if that is an important standard in that grade level. And a lot of that is educating the parents too, that this isn't abnormal and this doesn't mean it's an F and all of those kinds of things. When you're used to seeing all letter grades and, you know, they'll want, okay, what do all 4s mean? What do all 3s mean? You know, does that mean my student's an A student or, well, it's 3 out of 4, that's a 75%. How can that be an A? That's, you know, that might be a C, you know. And so, I mean, there's a lot of other things that have to go into trying to help explain it, define it, but it is not a new concept.
It would just be good to understand the why and like what other districts have seen improvement wise from going to that model.
I think that's a good question, and that could be part of our exploration going into next year. Even next year is maybe interviewing some schools who have gone all the way through the process. And I think that would be smart. I'm sure there's districts in the area. I know of a few that have done the work.
How many grades at the elementary are using letter grades?
I would say we're not standards based, but we list out the skills. You know, but I don't think any of us actually have used A, B, or C at this point. So I don't think so. No, I think in 5th grade did for a while, and they moved to more of a proficiency rating. Like, I don't remember the exact lettering. That's the other issue too. We've got different systems within the school itself, so we really want to streamline it a little bit more so in the same language. That's part of the issue. That's part of the reason we're pursuing.
Okay.
Better communicate with home is possible.
That's good. I mean, my understanding of the report card is that most of it says progressing or like needs improvement or meets expectations or exceeds, something like that.
Yep. It's a similar model to that, except it's aligned with the standards. And our report cards are aligned with some of the skills that we feel are important. We've never done an unpacking process of well, which standards. There's a ton of standards. Which standards are we really reinforcing? It feels most critical for your kids to be able to do.
Seem like the resource, just for, to your point about like what the resources, I saw the newsletter just before it came, but there's some good questions about like mindset, like what is it that you're trying to measure? Right? So like even the impact on kids who are like, oh, we got a 2. It's October and I got a 2, I should have a 4 or whatever, just understanding. And that's why the communication part seems so important. Even kids are still thinking about it like, did I get an A? Am I the best? Am I the worst? Instead of like, what am I learning and how do I know what I should work, you know?
Right, so you might know some districts that have gone this route.
Yeah, I'll look, I do actually, but I'll check and see how it's going.
Yeah.
Maybe did it work for it? Stop it.
I know at some parent-teacher conferences, the teacher has performed a self-assessment for the students, and they fill out what they think they need to work on, and what they are doing well. I think it's a nice practice, just for the advanced kids at least. I don't know if it's standardized across all teachers, but that's another way to incorporate the students in terms of forming their own expectations and reflecting on the progress they've made themselves.
We've also been working with portfolios. 4th and 5th graders, they've been making their own portfolios, but it's not real rigorous to that point where you're more of the self-assessment. That's where you can go with that too, is to not just limit it to the standards, but also to artifacts. That one's simple. Kids reflect on it. That's the touchdown.
I think I remember even there was a behavioral component to some assessment, be a better listener or something like that. You can see your own kid, that's them, evaluate themselves on how good, how well they're following the rules and how well they're following the expectations in class.
That could definitely be a component of that too.
Sure.
Of all these standards, let's take the 5 or 6 most important and have the student take a moment to reflect on them too. And you get the largest impact when the kids are assessing.
I would have to question.
Right.
They get an elementary age. They want to grade themselves better than they actually are.
I know, I think some of the.
I know adults who do the same thing. Yes.
They can be pretty insightful though too. Good stuff. And I'll keep sharing out when we discover more.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're at the budget comparison.
So in your board book, you will see that you're going April, at the end of April, we had expended 72.8% of the budget. And in April of 23, we're at 74% of the budget. So basically on track with the budget. So I'm feeling good. We're working on looking at potentially some pre-purchasing things to help offset some of the budget issues that we're concerned about this upcoming school year, but financially in great shape this year.
Any other comments or questions on the progress? Okay, good. We'll move to action items.
So the first action item is approval of the open enrollment students, and you approve in and out. You could do it separately or together. I would like to point out in your board packet, there is one change. And the change is due to following the policy that we have in place. So the policy that you created earlier this year prior to the January board meeting. Down near the bottom, 1, 2, 3, the 5th student up from the bottom has a put on waiting list in the far right hand column. That actually should come off due to your policy that talks about if they're on a tuition waiver that doesn't count against the cap. this particular student would be let in under open enrollment. So I would approve the open enrollments before you. There is one on there that would be denied based on also the requirements in January. It's a student that has an IEP coming to us. We do not have space capability for that particular student. So that student would be informed that their open enrollment would be denied at this point in time. But all others would be accepted as shown. Then we basically would have one new open enrolled out. So the current number, we'd end up with a net 24 students in if all students end up choosing to come to Mineral Point in the fall of the year.
Is this for, so like, we look at the grades, is that the grade they're in this year or the grade that they'd be going into next year?
Open enrolling into this grade next year.
It says 2 that's going into second grade next year.
Correct.
Got it. Thanks.
What's KG?
Kindergarten.
How do we
Back to
feel
school grades.
looking at the enrollees out? We have 3 4Ks and 2 3Ks. I feel like historically we've been a net positive in those younger grades, and it looks like, oh, okay, doing the quick math, we're probably still a net positive, but does that, having kind of a concentration at those lower grades, does that like give you any feels, or is it just a matter of circumstance?
I don't know the names. And you should not know the
I
names.
don't want to know the names.
So I don't know if any of these are some of the parents that came to us and said, if there is no after school care, I don't know if any of these are those same students and same families that talked about it. And it would, if that may change, it might simply be circumstances of, I'll just take my child, I might work in this school district, or I might work right next to the school. It is something we would want to keep an eye on as we go forward. But yes, you're right. We typically get more open enrollees coming into some of those earlier grade levels because of some services and things that we can offer.
These other schools that what's the difference between 3K and 4K?
Only designated if they're identified with the services.
Okay.
And if you look at only one of those students is currently attending the Mineral Point School District. So obviously our 4K and pre-K students would not have been here yet.
Right.
So it's not like we had them and lost them.
Do you know what Barneveld, Darlington, Darlington, Dodgeville, Platteville, do any of those have full-time 3K or 4K?
Dodgeville does 4 days a week.
Plan?
Yes. I don't know about Barneveld.
Platteville, maybe just childcare.
Platteville has wraparound childcare.
Yeah. Well. What is the student niche compared to our numbers from last year? So are we kind of going up or down in terms of open enrollment?
If all of these students come in, yes, our number would continue to go up. I mean, we'll have some students graduating,
Sure.
but in all honesty, our open enrollment is what's giving us an increase in our student population.
Right.
And this one kindergartner was denied because we don't have physical space.
Correct.
We don't, I thought it was denied around having an IEP and saying
That program does not have space available
Okay.
to it.
yes, we are maxed out on what we can support in that arena.
Correct.
What you're saying is, based on these early open enrollment numbers, we're trending higher than we were last year.
Trending in a positive direction, yes. Our enrollment is positive these numbers. These do not, none of these numbers include students that are currently open enrolled to us. Once you're in, you're in. So these are all new students. So this would be potentially 24 new students coming into our district.
Okay, in addition to our current open enrolled kids, of which we're only losing one.
On this, as a new, we might have some graduations. We might have some students that are
I
open
see.
enrolled. I don't have that number before me as to how many open enrolled in that are seniors that will be
I see.
graduating, but based on these numbers, it is a positive student gain for us, for the district.
Last time I checked, we're one of the few districts in the whole area that has that positive open enrollment.
Need a motion to approve?
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Any more comments? Questions?
In the board book. Goal. Pack.
Eric Harrison, Skelding. Okay, go ahead.
Chris,
Yes.
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Skelding,
Yes.
Bergstrom.
Yes.
Bush,
Yes,
Dunn.
Yes. The next is approving the recommended changes to Rule 458.
So in your board book, you have a copy of it. It's not a colored copy in the board book. If you're online, there are two sections in that are in blue ink that represent additions recommended to us from the DPI. They came out and did an audit. It is on, the first one is on page 3. And basically, the first bullet point under placement says the student's education may continue in the school of origin for the duration of homelessness. And then the addition is and until the end of the academic year, if the student becomes permanently housed. That's an add. In the next paragraph, down in red, the phrase for the duration of homelessness is a deletion. And then on the final page, there is a paragraph addition under transportation. If it is determined to be in the best interest of the student to continue in their school of origin, and transportation is requested by the parent, guardian, or unaccompanied youth, transportation will be provided to and from school of origin until the end of the school year, during which the child or youth becomes permanently housed. Transportation will be arranged promptly, will allow for immediate enrollment, and will not create barriers to the attendance, retention, and success of homeless children and youth. So those are the recommendations coming from the DPI. With your approval, the DPI signs off that this rule and our policy meet all the criteria that they have in place.
And this is a first reading, and then we do a second reading. This is different for a rule change. No, same
No,
thing.
this is in effect part of our policy. So yes, the same procedures would apply. First reading, second reading next month.
Listening to you, the chair of policy.
Yes, and it voted 3-0.
You make a motion on the first reading?
No.
So no action, essentially, right?
Right. It'll come back in the June board meeting for final approval at the second reading.
Right, next is approval of health insurance for next year.
So the finance committee meeting, potential insurance options were brought forward. Still using the Dean insurance provider. I had shared that our current insurance plan on a renewal basis was quoted at a 4% increase, so no changes whatsoever to the insurance plan would be a 4% increase in premium from the 22-23 school year to the 23-24. Conversations about other districts being slightly higher to 4.5 to potentially 16%. And there are some districts that are looking at even higher. You had asked me, who I in turn asked then our insurance broker to come back with a couple of other proposals. We have a point of service plan that was, the POS was kind of thrown around a little bit differently, but it's a point of service plan, an increase to the drug card. So the current drug card is at a 0, 5, and 20. Change an increase to a 5, 10, and 25, depending on what level of generic drug, what tier it is, would be an increase for the employee. And simply by making that particular move, the increase went from 4% to 2.9%. Then there was the possibility of an HMO with an increase in drug card to the same, the 5, 10, and 20. And that was a 0% change from this current year's premium. As it came out of the committee meeting, a recommendation was to offer employees an option. They could choose the point of service or they could choose the HMO, with the caveat that if the employees were to choose the point of service, the difference in the premium between the HMO and the point of service would be 100% their responsibility. That amounts to about, if you're on a family plan, that's $21.29 per check. If you are single, it's $8.19 per check, or a total of $553.56 for the family plan, or $212.88 for the single plan. So that was the recommendation coming out of the finance committee meeting, is to offer a dual choice between the point of service and the HMO.
Essentially, the recommendation enables like a net zero impact on the budget. So that's a really big cost savings to the district. It's time when we're trying to figure that out.
No. And moving forward, if this is the path, employees could choose. Somebody chooses a point of service this year, they could choose the HMO next year, or vice versa. There's open enrollment period once a year that allows people to switch back and forth.
I think it's important to note, just for anybody that who may believe that we are taking something away or changing something drastically to the employees, is that 96%, over 96% of the claims in the last year on the POS actually would have fallen under the HMO. So nearly all of our claims are already, nearly all of our staff is already, and some of those claims that were not, were also beyond the POS when it had to get secondary approval. So what we're really doing is providing a better option for the district or the plan that the staff is actually already using. So kudos to, yeah. So kudos to Mitch for digging into this and realizing it was an option and that we probably were overspending in the past. So
It was 3-0 recommended out of committee.
yes.
Yeah, I'll take a motion to approve these changes.
A second.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions?
Question, and not closely tied to the insurance, but I think everybody probably understands that this is a high deductible insurance plan, but the district covers a very large majority of that deductible. Mitch, my question is, what do we do anything, any sort of like tax protected account or anything with the money that we set aside to pay for that deductible? Does it just sit in our general fund until we have claims? And is there something we could do this to save ourselves any money or stretch that?
We in essence need to budget for that portion of the deductible on a year after year basis. I don't know that there's something that we can do to kind of prevent the tax on that money. And, you know, there's a retirement account that, you know, that has that number, but this money would not be able to go into that account. Because it would need to be paid out. That can only be specifically paid for retirement benefits. This is not a retirement benefit, but it's something we can certainly look into. I'm just not aware of anything that allows for, you know, a deposit into something that can be kind of a free flowing dollar amount. It's a good question, though. I can certainly look into that.
Not necessarily pertaining particularly to this, but insurance question in general.
Questions, discussion? Just go ahead.
I just want to, you know, I think it's something we didn't discuss necessarily at the finance committee meeting, but something we've discussed in years past. Just, you know, kudos to our staff for, I mean, I don't know if you can congratulate people for staying healthy, but, you know, we've had multiple years where we have been, you know, behind the average increase. And I think it's part of it. I think it speaks to the work environment that's provided, and, you know, happy employees generally have better insurance records. So I think kudos to the staff in general and the morale in the district for getting back to, you know, being one of the lowest increases. Oddly, I think, you know, it speaks to, you know, the climate of the district once again, and where we've kind of gotten back to after COVID. So
I think we could say kudos to Mitch and the admin team then for fostering a positive work environment.
Absolutely.
Before we call the vote, I'm letting the board know I'm going to abstain from this. The health insurance is administered by Dean Health Plan, it's a subsidiary of my employer. So I know we're not really picking between health plans necessarily, but I feel it's appropriate to stay on both. Okay. Angie, you call the question?
Harris,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Gelding,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Bush,
yes.
Dunn.
Abstain. Okay, next is approval of certified staff compensation.
Let me ask a question. I'm sorry. In our board packet, there's this policy 189, and there's like several apologies, virtual board meetings and emergency situations. Was that just an error in photocopy?
No, we were gonna talk about that, and
It's on the agenda.
Oh, it's on the agenda. I'm sorry. I just thought it would.
Once again,
Would have been-
overachievers, jumping ahead. Stay with the class.
Reading ahead.
Look out, Gordon, page ahead.
I was just. For the next thing.
I would actually ask that you look at items 4 and 5 together, certified staff compensation and support staff compensation. I would ask that you table this every year in May. This is a topic we talk about, and Member Bush had brought this up earlier. We talk about, you know, can we give CPI? If we can't give CPI, the board has determined what percentage of an increase in those kinds of things. We have no information from Madison, you know, from the legislature. They haven't even begun discussing their education funding, other than I just saw something today about they decided they were going to take off a large chunk of money for student mental health in schools. The governor put in, I want to say it was like $200+ million as a request. And I just saw today that was removed, but they're not to the point. The legislature is not to the point. The Joint Finance Committee is not to the point of talking about educational funding. The last I heard was hopefully the end of this month. So we don't have any information. We know when I met with the finance committee, I put together potential 4% increase in what that has done to the budget. And I know board members have talked about trying to get as close to CPI as possible, depending on what kind of additional funding we get from Madison and what kind of relief they may give to revenue limits and those kinds of things. I have been hand delivering a letter of intent to employ to all our employees and have just a very small, less than a handful of people I still need to get to. And I've explained this to everybody that I've handed this out, just basically reiterating the fact that I don't know what the school district's going to get as far as budget support from Madison. So at this point in time, no one is comfortable putting a percent or a number or anything on a contract, but that this letter serves as a contract. So we fully intend to employ you next year. And once we get this information, the board will make its decision, and then the actual contract itself with a dollar amount or an hourly rate will be on that as we move forward. Everybody seems to understand, and they also are aware of the news going on that there is nothing to talk about yet because we're not getting any information. So in essence, everybody's letter basically states they will not be employed and paid less than what they're currently making. So they know that. They know that if we get into August or September before we get any information, they would be paid based on this current year's salary. And then at that point in time, we would have to issue back pay or figure out how they would like to see their back pay. Do they want it in one check? Do they like it spread out over the remaining checks and so on and so forth? It might be best for the bookkeeping department, for the business department to pay it in one check. But we're just at the mercy of what kind of funding will we get from the state. So at this point in time, I don't really have a recommendation and would just ask that we table the certified staff and support staff compensation.
I move that I'm sorry, before I make that motion, until when?
I wish I had that day for you. Until I get information, I'm hoping the Joint Finance Committee is supposed to present a budget to the governor in June. But there's no punishment consequence if they don't make that. They have to approve it in the Finance Committee. Then it has to go to the full legislature and pass the Assembly and the Senate before it goes to the governor.
Why don't we table it until the June meeting?
Okay, that's where I was looking.
Knowing that we may not have any additional information until after the June board meeting, and we may not be able to take action until July. Really, and even in that case, be minimal back pay if we made a decision in July.
Most likely there would be one pay period prior to the July board meeting if we actually have some hard numbers. So it's not that big of an issue for the bookkeeping department, the business department.
And do you have any thoughts on that as Chair of Finance?
And until we know more, we've kind of hashed out everything we do know. We'll know a little more, a little more in June about what the rest of the budget looks like, if we're able to pre-purchase anything like that. But in terms of, I guess I would just ask Mitch to keep his ear to the ground if that's going to be a concern or retention if other districts are putting a number out there without new knowledge. Then we may have to figure something out. Otherwise, I don't know how anybody who didn't pass a referendum is going to make a decision to give a large increase that they don't have.
For sure. No, I'm totally with you on that. I think as much as I worry about this creating anxiety for the staff, the overall intent is to try to really maximize their salary for next year as best possible. So, I don't know if you said this, Mitch, or if you said it previously, if we approve, 2% CPI or 4% CPI today, and then we end up getting a ton of money from Madison, way more than expected, and it turns out we could have paid 6% or full CPI. And So we don't want to be in that position necessarily. I mean,
Part of the reason why I hand delivered all these letters too, so that if there were questions, I could try to answer them to the best of my ability right then and there too, to try to just give people an understanding that none of us like being in this situation, but our hands are tied, not knowing what kind of financing might come. So, but I will certainly do that. Keep my ears open.
and you also made the good point that we won't have to drag it out next year because it's a 2-year budget. So we'll know what we'll be getting.
Correct.
Following May.
Yep.
We'll be able to make this decision a little more with the information we need. Good. Okay.
Right. So with that, I will move to table action items 4 and 5 until our June meeting.
I'll second.
Can I ask one question? Yeah. I just want to make sure I got it right. So like by tabling it now, we're keeping the door open so that if there's more money coming, can we table it again in July if we
Yes.
need to? Okay.
Yes, we can table it as much as we feel is necessary. I think tabling it just till June allows us to take action in June if we somehow get some information or we feel like we need to make a decision. Any other questions or comments?
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Skelting,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Next is approval of summer school wage scale.
If my complicated formula made sense, anybody that is a current employee, they're paid during the summer on this basis. Their salary divided by 190 days, divided by 8 hours, at which point they get 80% of that. So we get a daily rate, an hourly rate, and then they're getting 80% of what that equals. So again, I say this as when summer school takes place, their pay for summer school is based on what their salary is. So if it's the end of this fiscal year, if summer school were to take place in June, it's based on this salary. If summer school happens in July, it's based on their new salary. I'm recommending, because we're starting to take registrations and push that information out to people for summer school, I'm making the recommendation that you approve the summer school salary structure based on 22-23 salary. So even though it won't happen until July 1, the new fiscal year, that we put together their contract based on this current school year's salary, so that we can get that information to them, that they would know this is what I will be paid per hour for summer school.
It's paid out of next year's budget. Correct.
Correct.
But it also allows you to finalize that number as an expense.
Correct.
I'll make that motion.
Oops, any other comments, questions?
So summer school or adventure or whatever we're calling it happens in July. But we are saying right now that their salary for summer school is going to be based on what they're making right now,
Yeah,
even if that changes in July.
that is correct.
So if it changes in July, they're still going to be making their salary based on what they're making right now.
That's my recommendation. I need to be able to get this information to them, and I'm just not comfortable that we'll have enough information.
Any questions, comments?
Bush,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Skelting,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Next is approval to move the board meetings to our boardroom space.
But in your board packet, you have policies 188 about board members through technology, the emergency, 189 emergency situations, which created the ability to attend, set up the Zoom meetings and those kinds of things. And we moved into the library as a result of all of the health issues that we've dealt with over the last few years. Dr. Dunn and I met to discuss this board agenda. End of the week is the day of reckoning. World Health Organization is supposed to be coming out saying we're not in a pandemic stage anymore. So the question was, do we want to move the board meetings back into the boardroom? And then it would also, we've been very accommodating with our policies and with attendance. Someone's away for a meeting, that's all been allowed. Once the pandemic is over, then policy 188 would come back into effect. If you're unable to attend a meeting personally, you could attend through calling in through a Zoom meeting, but that would require all members present to vote in a majority to allow you to do that. That's what policy 188 says. So it's not saying that you can't do that, but you would take a step back to that other policy, which would now come into force and say, oh, I can't, I'm out of town. I can join through Zoom. Right now, we can allow that, no questions asked. Once the pandemic is done, end of this week, the declaration of a pandemic is done, then you would need the rest of your board members to approve you attending either through Zoom or through phone call or anything of that nature.
Ask people who are on the board, we use the old boardroom. I don't know, Joni, were you?
I was not. I joined.
Just Andy and Karen. Do you like it better in there? Because to me, an alternative is we say we don't really need our own room. Like, could we use that space for something else, like kind of classroom or whatever? Do we really need a dedicated room, or would you keep that as a meeting room, or like, I really don't feel like we need our own room.
It might be a knockdown, drag out fight to see what we can do with that room.
Yeah.
It is very beneficial to have a meeting location, not just for board meetings, but that room is used. We've been doing AP testing in that room this week. We use that room for health screenings. We use that room for a lot of other things. Mr. Austin would love to be able to get an additional room for some more space in the middle school, high school building. So it could be put to use in a different capacity other than just trying to hold it for board meetings. And to be honest, when it was the old time prior to the pandemic, a lot of those things took place in there as well. There were certain things we couldn't do in the room because we needed to make sure it maintained the function for board meetings when those came around.
It's to Will's point, do you feel like it serves enough other purposes now where the benefit gained from completely converting that room to something else would be outweighed by the loss of all the availability for the current purposes for it? That made any sense? I guess what I'm saying is, do you really like having that as a kind of multi-purpose room for testing or other meetings, or?
Yes.
I mean, to the point where you wouldn't want to give it up for.
I would fight trying to turn it into another classroom that is dedicated, is a dedicated space used all hours of the day, because we have those needs for those things, those other meeting spaces for larger groups. I know a lot of IEP meetings take place in there.
It serves as a great multi-purpose. As he said, we use it for testing and other things throughout the day, but it does It allows us to let outside groups come in and meet with kids and stuff, so we wouldn't change that. And it's really not big enough to be a classroom. Right. It does serve as a good multi-purpose room during the day, which I don't think affects.
At one time, we'd looked at it, you know, with a hopeful eye that maybe we could turn it into the media studio. But again, we lose out on that location for other purposes. So we've been able to find an adequate space for the media kids downstairs. So yeah, if you don't move back in, we probably won't change how we're using that room right now as it is. We would continue to use it for that multi-purpose.
Edie and Aaron, is there any benefit to us meeting there versus here?
This is gonna sound odd, but the expensive table that was purchased for meetings. And not having to rearrange the library for every one of our meetings.
Well, virtual sound quality too. Sometimes it's hard to hear.
It's better in there, I think.
Might be an advantage.
That's one of the key reasons why I wanted to bring it up. I haven't had a ton of feedback about these meetings in general, but the main feedback I've had is I can't hear people, certain people speak. And, you know, we probably could move the mic or make some minor adjustments, but,
We could easily rearrange the tables in here and put the mic, you know, come a little closer to the screen,
sure,
you know,
we could improve things a little bit.
and do some things in here. that
As,
still
as someone who listened to board meetings when y'all were in that room versus listening to board meetings in here, the quality of what participants can hear in this room it's really hard to hear what's happening in this room versus what happened in the boardroom.
I think that's the main reason. Yeah, I mean, the other thought was, you know, as board president, I'm always thinking, okay, we made all these exceptions for COVID. Are we going to return to normalcy in any way? This is kind of another symbolic return to normalcy, but so yeah, my thought was better sound quality. It is smaller, so there were some board meetings that I thought were crowded in terms of public attendance and you know, recognitions. You know, we had some students waiting in the hall for their time to come in, which I don't think was a huge deal. So there's that. And my other question was if we want to continue to not only record the meetings, but continue to live stream the meetings. We have the technology in that room to be able to do that. And I think we decided that we do have the technology to both live stream and record. And so pre-COVID, we were not live streaming. We were only recording. And there was no remote public participation.
Which I would think if we're going to revert back to an emergency vote to allow a board member to participate electronically, the electronic participation would have to go away.
Do we really need to vote? That,
Well,
That's your
You
To
actually,
move back into that room.
no, to like, where you'd have to vote to allow somebody to attend remotely.
we have to change board policy.
That is your board policy.
Yeah, no, I think that we can look at it for sure. But I think Mitch's point is, you know, the exception to the board policy was made due to a
And there-
pandemic.
there may be some open meeting law that policy is derived from, that we actually have to provide permission for somebody to participate remotely in an open meeting.
The board side of it.
Yeah.
Are you talking about community participation?
No, board.
Okay.
Then to Justin's point, do you think that, I think it would potentially be acceptable for open meetings law for us to provide that authorization to join remotely as a board policy rather than doing it instance by instance.
I think that's what we have to look into, because I would guess that's why it's written that way, and it probably references a mini statute in the policy.
Right. The other nice thing about
community.
Yeah, we could talk about it for sure. The other nice thing about the board policy is it stipulates that you can't remotely join a confidential meeting. You know, whether it be closed session or an expulsion hearing or something that's confidential. People can't participate. Yeah. So I think we should preserve that exception. But yeah, if we want to change the board policy to allow remote participation, I think as long as it's consistent with state statute, we could look at that for sure. You make a good point though about mirroring our practice with public participation remotely as well. But I think that if we do change how board members can participate, I think we could potentially incorporate that into board policy in terms of re-allowing public comment remotely. You know, we could consider that as an option to continue that. But I think you're right. Until we change the board policy, that would probably need to be suspended.
So if we move back into that room, community can't participate like this?
No, I think it's not necessarily the change of location. It's really the
I see what you're saying.
The fact that our pandemic-based exception to the board policy kind of by rule has to expire.
Sure.
In order to keep this option available for the public, we have to.
Yes, in order to allow the public to comment remotely, we would need to change board policy. But I think we can continue to allow the public to live stream remotely, which I think the public enjoys and appreciates.
However, the public can still email us if they want to bring something up, and we can read something out loud if they're no longer allowed to comment that way.
Yeah, and along those lines, we should probably change the statement in the agenda that says they can do that to your email. I believe it still has Nate's information in there. Or did the last time I read it?
I think it has my email on there.
It may now. It may have just been the last month that I read that statement and that Nate's
on the board book, on the agenda.
Yeah,
it's got my email on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So didn't we change the policy? And maybe this is what you're referring to, but that we will summarize an email, but not necessarily read it verbatim.
That's what I was just going to say.
Okay.
Yes.
We don't want to start reading,
It still follows the 3-minute rule for
Yes.
any comment received. Yeah. No, we can still receive email correspondence indefinitely, and the public is still invited to come to the meetings. The public comment period is not going to change unless the board strongly feels like it should change in any way.
Tonight, we're approving just logistically moving rooms.
I believe so, unless we need to change anything else, which in terms of making action.
I would say, yes, that's what you're looking at. I would assume WASB will send out some guidance that once the declaration of a pandemic is ended, do like this emergency situation policy. We don't want to eliminate it from our board policy book, but it's like, okay, you now need to revert back to any previous policies about attendance at board meetings. So, and if not, if I don't see anything from them in the next week or so, I might just reach out to Bob Butler and ask, for some guidance or some.
If we need to vote to pause, to put these on the back burner.
Right.
Yeah. And since we're going to meet the policy meeting next month anyway, good to have that info by then.
Okay, so are we planning on, just for the sake of the public, planning on next meeting? Are we planning on everything to stay the same for the June meeting until the federal declaration of pandemic expires, which I believe it expires this week? Yeah. And await WASB guidance on open meetings law and changing our board policy, and then address that at the June meeting or at the.
You could say, you know what? When we start the next school year, we'd like to move our board meetings back into the boardroom, back into that location and maintain June, July, and August board meetings in this setting, in this environment. And yes, I'm writing a note now to reach out to Bob Butler just to get that. So for that June policy committee, that we might get more guidance. So just what would you prefer to stay here? Do you want to move back into the boardroom? You could set that up.
I propose we stay here and get the policies sorted out over the summer, and it's probably a little cooler in this room this summer and then that act room. But then, push for it for August or whatever. That works.
So we could take no action, or we could table it till the June meeting.
Yeah. Policy sorted out, what we want to do for remote attendance and all that, the legal opinion if we need to for on opens meeting law. And we could just do it all at once.
I think if we table it, then that ensures it's on the agenda in June. That seem reasonable?
Yeah, and we just need to be aware that if the expulsion of the pandemic reverts back to old policies, we'll have 2 readings before we can change anything. If our policies go back into place, we would just need 2 readings before we get back to the new status quo of if we choose to do things that way.
Yeah.
So the June board meeting may be dictated by what we find out from Bob Butler.
Right.
And less about what our preference is.
Right. You're saying if we decide to change board policy, that would require 2 readings before it goes into place. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, obviously it's not urgent or hugely important, right? But I'm going to just have it out there to consider.
That is probably the most feedback I get is about the audio.
We can adjust before we vote on anything, right? Move the mic a little closer and.
It doesn't really matter. I have not noticed a difference when they move the mic around.
I think Member Dunn's just trying to get himself out of camera view.
I think he wants to be at the head of the table.
Back in his seat off of camera in the old.
Oh, is that where he was?
Yeah.
The president's, finds.
And even my pre-president seat was opposite.
The other side.
That was good. You found me out, Andy. That's my whole scheme. Get off camera.
You should vote that the president sit at the head or the foot of the table.
Yeah. I don't know why. It does make some sense. I mean, the person running the meeting should probably be seen. I don't think Jeff was, he was partially seen on the video. Let's move on.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyway, it was comical. Okay, so can we take a motion to table this?
Move to table.
The June meeting? Okay, that was Harris Bergstrom. Any other discussion? Go ahead.
Yes.
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Skelting,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Next is athletic director compensation. Oh, sorry, this is the PE athletic director position. Compensation.
Correct.
So we're going to discuss that in closed session.
Correct.
Before taking a vote on changing the position, because it may involve some sensitive information or.
And a level of compensation attached to that position.
Sure.
Is employee services going to go to closed session?
There's the option for that. Yes. Anytime there's a new hire, we can discuss a new hire in closed session before approving it. So should we start with a motion to table action item 8 until after a closed session?
You can, yes.
I was thinking we're going to do number 9, closed session 2. Should we just wrap up business services?
Yes. You can reorder your agenda that way and go to business services and then come back. Or go to closed session and come back into employee services and that PE athletic director position.
Okay. So just procedurally, so we would make a motion to table this action item
Until after closed session.
until after closed session. Then we'd go to business services,
Yes.
and then
If you,
We need a motion to table everything prior to business services.
yes,
If we're gonna move them all to session discussion.
well, the 2 hires are after business services on the agenda.
Can we just make a motion
I
to
would just make
say,
it motion
I think you can lump them all into one motion.
after, just table them all until after closed session.
Okay, so we could make a motion to table action item number 8 plus employee services until after closed session.
So move.
Here's Skelding.
Yes.
Yes. Johnson,
Yes.
Skelding,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Switch,
Yes,
Dunn.
Yes. Okay, next is business services. Make a motion to approve credit card statement of activity and bills payable together or separately.
Make a motion to approve them together.
I'll second.
Mitch, I do have a question. We processed over $11,000 of transportation reimbursements this cycle. Is it an option for us to, rather than paying out transportation reimbursements, provide the transportation? As in, those students would ride their normal bus route or would ride whatever buses go past their place of residence, and then we have a shuttle that goes to whatever private or whatever other school they're attending.
That is an option.
At $11,000, is that financially beneficial to us? And has it been that high in the past? I don't recall. I felt like I had a little bit of sticker shock this year.
I think the number of students is higher this year than it has been in previous years. This is something that we've paid every year.
Right.
But yeah, I believe the number of students is a little bit higher this year, which makes that number. And to your point earlier in the night, when you talked about the WASB delegate and taking that position, it would make sense if I had to take my first child over to school, come back, get my second child and go over, drop them off and come back and get my third child, that I get mileage for all 3 children. That's the way the law is written, that they get mileage for every child. And I think it has come forward that we look at that and we'll pay mileage per household versus per child. But yes, if the district does not provide that transportation, then it comes at our cost. I would need.
I just want to interrupt because I think I'd like to name it specifically what we're talking about, because it's being recorded and will be on the internet. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mitch, but essentially what we're talking about is that there's 7 families who live in our school district with 15 total kids, and the 7 families are taking their children to St. Joe's in Dodgeville. You know, we don't know what age these kids are, but obviously school age. And what Joni is asking about is that on our list for bills payable for this month, these 7 families are coming to the school district for reimbursement for transporting their kids, providing transportation for their kids. It's $760 a pop. And
Which they
however,
are completely in their right to do, right? Like
So however-
legally, they're in the right to do.
Yeah.
however many students, you know, they're taking, they can get $760 per kid. So, in my understanding is that we don't legally, you know, we're required to provide this because they're going to private school. But if a child is open enrolling outside of our district to like public school, we do not provide a reimbursement to the parents for them to go to another public school. So it is legal and it's within their rights. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to me at the same time. Like, yes, they can do it. And what especially doesn't make sense was what you were getting to, Mitch, that it's not 3 separate car trips to Dodgeville to St. Joe's. Presumably, they're taking all 3 kids, if they have 3 kids, from Mineral Point in the morning to St. Joe's and then picking them up. Somebody in their family's doing that, but they can still get $750 a pop. And I would just like to highlight the total cost of that is $11,394. And I would assume, and stop me if I'm wrong, Mitch, that by kids, I guess the question is, and this is neither here nor there, but just to understand like these financial impacts that open enrollment and enrollment out of our school district have. I would presume that we would lose $12,500-ish per kid that go St. Joe's. I mean, is that like that's like the money that the coupon or whatever that they can then take to St. Joe's?
The voucher.
Voucher.
We don't lose 100% of the funding for students that open enroll out, just like we don't get 100% of the funding for an open enrolled student in. So it would be a little bit lesser amount. Our district, we get $12,500 per pupil.
Mm-hmm.
That's through all of the referendums that we've passed and the level of commitment that the district or that the community has made to the school district.
Mm-hmm.
Not every school district gets that same dollar amount, but when a student open enrolls out, they take 2/3 of that dollar amount with them.
That's more like 8,500. Or
Well, the
That's
private
per
school
pupil.
Situation is different, right, in terms of money in versus out. And it would be for a.
Correct. If it's on a voucher, that's different than open enrollment. There's a different dollar amount that goes with the voucher.
about 2/3.
The open enrollment number is about 2/3.
Okay.
Is
the private school voucher more or less, you know? Rachel?
It was set to increase over time.
Right. And I'm thinking it's more than $8,500.
Yeah. Well, I guess my greater point is just to illustrate like what our school district is up against when we're talking about financing and making all these decisions. Like if you look at 12,500 and you add in this transportation cost, that's $198,900 that our school district, you know, misses out on, like losing kids to St. Joe's. If it's less, then it's maybe more like 150. But I've got a real problem with the transportation law as it stands. And I was not aware of this, and I'll be writing to our legislatures and creating awareness in our community for other people to write to the legislators. I don't have a problem with people enrolling their kids elsewhere, and I understand they may have various reasons to do it, whether that's a private school or a public school, but getting an extra $760 for every kid that you are taking there out of our pocket, like out of public education in a town where you live, makes absolutely no sense to me. In the first place, even the one, you know, you can choose to go to a different school, but you got to provide transportation, bucko. But, you know, doing it for every single kid is really, you know, a big impact on our budget.
I can ask Todd to kind of give me a price, what it would cost, because for 15 students, we'd have to run a bus of some sort.
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
2 smaller vehicles, but I can get that price for you and I can shoot that out to all board members as soon as I get it.
I'm just very curious because I believe that, our buses, our rural buses or the buses that are picking up students now are not running at full capacity. I don't think most of those buses come back, you know, with every seat full.
Right.
And so if it costs us less than $11,400 to have a bus go back and forth between here and St. Joe's, then I think that's something we should consider.
Sure.
But that doesn't, I mean, for tonight, we certainly approve it. I just end up conversation.
We have to approve it, right?
Correct.
No option.
That is current state law.
I do think though there might be an opportunity to consider like, what is it that we're not offering? Because there's some things that a public school can offer, like religious instruction or things like that, that we just shouldn't, you know, adapt to. Then there might be other things that aren't available that we're not thinking about that we could be providing. Like the kids who, is there like some survey we can ask families to do when they open and roll out, or
That was
you
my
know,
other
is there a
question
way to
about,
get that data?
just a little segue on that. Are these kids in the open enrollment numbers, or is this like different because it's a private school?
Would be different through the voucher system.
Okay, so that didn't show up on our first report tonight. Okay.
Yeah.
Rachel, I mean, I like your idea about generally, like in the specific case, to those specific parents, like what it is that you're getting, but then also kind of broader for open enrollment. I know, and actually, Mitch, I remember you talking last year when we were having this open enrollment discussion that you do reach out, like on a one-on-one basis sometimes to ask, hey, is there anything we can do, like sorry to see you leave kind of thing. So I know you're doing that work, at least kind of anecdotally getting in touch.
You have informal information about why they're not within our district.
The particular students we're providing transportation for, that I do not have. That would just be a continuation of families that have made that choice in prior years. But I can certainly reach out and just.
I know that we did talk last year about doing some kind of, when they open and roll out, doing some kind of survey as to why, and if it is something that we are not providing. I remember we talked about that last year.
Just might provide insight, like when we're thinking about investments or, you know, changes that are inevitable, like do we have data from actual people putting kids in a school center?
If they're willing to share.
That's the part. I mean, if you have anecdotal data for open and roll out, that's probably as good as you're gonna
It was, you know, so different coming out of the pandemic because a lot of it was to do with masking, right? Like people didn't like the masking policy here either on one side or the other, and they decided to leave. So this is this looks like a much less daunting number back to the open enrollment
like
conversation. Anyway.
Yeah, yes, I recommend approval.
We already did that.
I think we have a motion and a
Oh, we have a
second.
motion? Oh, awesome.
Those discussion.
Okay, very good.
Right, there's a motion and a second. Yeah. Okay, we'll go ahead and vote.
Harris,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Gelding.
Yes.
Bergstrom.
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Okay. I'll take a motion to go into closed session and we'll discuss our new hires and possible adjustments to the PE athletic director position and compensation.
I move that we go into closed session.
Vote.
Yes.
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 Thank you, everyone online.